Oh.
Now is the time, a time you'll look back on, a time you adopt as inspiration. You will recollect this time, this moment, right now. Motivate yourself towards success. Overcome, take over. The time is now.
That went well.
Hey, we're just giving them a little bit of a sneak peek, weren't we? Just before we went live. That was all.
Good job we weren't saying anything.
Yeah, you know it. Evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Talk of the Toon. We are back again, and you know what? We said it last week, but it is really good to be just talking Newcastle United, particularly after the weekend's events, which we won't get onto tonight. But we're back in Newcastle now, so I'm very happy about that. But boys, I don't know how you feel. Looking forward to Newcastle United talk.
I am 100% because Dublin was not a good place to be on Saturday.
Why is that?
I had to switch my chat off because as soon as Kane missed that and France won that game, my WhatsApp just exploded from every man and dog I knew that lived in Dublin, its surroundings, or had suddenly miraculously forgotten about Thierry Henry's handball some time ago against the Irish, who then decided they were all indeed French, and wanted to message me and say, congratulations on your team being shit and getting knocked out. So yeah,
just for young back.
I had to turn my chat off and my WhatsApp off because it was just blown up. So yeah, thanks lads. But yeah, anyway, well, yeah, good, all good.
You sure Daz wasn't in those messages somewhere?
No.
No, he did send me one yesterday and then went too soon. So at least he kind of acknowledged that, you know, I might react to it. But no, listen. Look.
But I just sent it to Martin because none of the rest of you would have got it because it's a GAA reference. It's Harry Kane holding a Mayo jersey, and it's about the curse, the Mayo curse. Anyone from Ireland will get that.
It was
that's another show.
Exactly.
But,
good to be talking NUFC. Looking forward to the season getting back on track, and forgetting all about the World Cup. So,
definitely. Great show last night with Paul from Toon Review, the loaded Toon Review. Mark and Chris, I know yourselves didn't get on there, but it was good. Good
I'll be on the next one.
Yeah,
equally,
good job.
Equally great to have you boys on tonight, talking all things Newcastle. Richard, as Daz mentioned before, will be back very, very soon. But look, let's get the boys on. We've been waiting to talk to these lads for a while now, and lots to talk about with all things Newcastle. Really looking forward to getting their perspective. So let's get them in from the Shills Gazette. Dom Scurr.
welcome, Dom.
Evening, lads. You all right?
You okay?
Yeah, not bad. Thanks for having me back. It's been a while.
Surprise guest because Dom wasn't on the bill, and so it's extra special.
Late edition.
Two journalists tonight.
Late edition, yeah. Now, just before we get the other lad on, does he know we don't pay business class?
Maybe you might decide to disappear. Yeah, but look, as always, Newcastle Word's own Jordan Cronin. Bring him in. Go on, Daz.
Here he is. Hey, Jordan.
Yeah, there's no such thing as business class at National World. I'll tell you that for nothing. It wasn't easy getting a Riyadh. I'll tell you that. So yeah, Craig Hope who travelled over. He was Heathrow to Newcastle over Newcastle to Heathrow, Heathrow over to Riyadh. I was trained down to Manchester, Manchester to Istanbul, Istanbul over to Riyadh, and then back as well. So there was nothing business class about that trip, but obviously good to go anyway. But I just want to get out of the way first.
Fair play to you. Fair play to you. Definitely seemed like it was worth it. And look, I'm going to get your opinions on it in just a second. But look, the picture was out earlier. Why not stick it out? Stick it up again. We've got a new signing, and no, it's not just Mark. Mark's back with the boys, back as a 5. But we've got Jordan there. I think are you donning the shirt tonight?
Yeah, I'm a bit disappointed, lads. I feel like you've hung us out to dry a bit while no one else wearing it. It's just me.
I'll have to dig mine out.
There you go, Jordan. Now.
Hey.
There
we go.
I tell you one thing though, Pete. Jordan sat there with a t-shirt on. He didn't go business class, but it's obviously no problem for money for heating in his gaff because he's sat in a t-shirt in -6.
I was going to say I'm freezing. Yeah, like can I put a hoodie on or something?
Yeah, we do also do hoodies, and we also do beanies, and any if you just hit the website up.
Well, I see if Simon's watching and he fancies sending us a loaded hoodie, then I can wear that next time as well.
Oh, he's in the chat.
Jordan, you've done this before. I like it. There's got that little hint out there. But look, before we get onto looking ahead, because I think there's quite a lot to look ahead to, and quite excited about it all. You know, let's just kind of touch over the Saudi trip as a whole. You know, we spoke to you before, Jordan. Obviously, we knew you were going. Dom, you weren't there, but obviously we've all been watching it very, very closely, and to kind of look at the experience of it all. You know, Jordan, just from your perspective to start with, you know, what travel aside, what was the experience like for you? You know, reporting on all things Newcastle United whilst over in Riyadh. Was it as good as what it looked like from social media? And you know, what was the standout features for you whilst you were there?
Yeah, so I mean, an incredible experience. It's one of them places where you don't expect to go in life, to be honest, just because of financial reasons. So going to Saudi Arabia, I hadn't been there before, I hadn't been to the Middle East before, and look, I'll be honest, I went with preconceptions about the place, and to be honest, I was blown away by it. From what I'd seen, I didn't see a lot of Riyadh because obviously it was I was busy most days. I didn't have much time to go and see other places. But from where I was, you would have seen the photo on my social media of the Kingdom Tower where Newcastle's hotel was. That big building, obviously lit up different colours every minute or whatever. So from what I'd seen of it, it was a really, really nice place. The people were really welcoming. The people couldn't have done enough for you in terms of the taxi drivers, to the hotel staff, to just people on the street as well, seeing your face and asking about Newcastle United. That came at the fan event that we did on the Wednesday. There was a lot of different people there, and they were obsessed with Newcastle United, and even walking on the streets as well. There was Newcastle fans there walking along with strips, and everyone was fascinated by it. So in terms of an experience, an unbelievable experience. The access we got as well to Eddie Howe and the players. Thumbs up to the Newcastle United media team for that, because they've done a lot for us over there. We managed to sit down with Eddie Howe at the team hotel. Team hotel was absolutely unbelievable, as you'd expect, obviously, when Newcastle staying there. But we also got a spoke Alan St. Maxim, Chris Wood, like the owners, Amanda Stavey, Murdoch, Gadusi, Jamie Rubin, were walking past, having conversations with, as if we were just sort of the friends, if you like. So the experience was incredible to have that access to the club like that. You felt really close to the football club. So that was probably the standout moment for me, having that access with the players and the owners as well. So there's an overall experience. I really enjoyed it, and it's a place I would definitely love to go back to, because there was a lot of Riyadh I didn't get to experience, and I'd love to do that hopefully next time.
Daz, just pop that picture back up again, because I'm sure I can recognise someone in there. I think you can recognise someone else.
Yeah, there is. We talked about it on another show. This is. Let me just get the picture again because I'm switching between tabs here. But so give me one sec. Yeah, this is here. This is in the middle is the guy starting school for the first time, right at the back. See him?
Yeah, no, not Craig Hope. Just a bit further back.
Further back. That's the one.
Oh, at this point, it would have been perfect to have a little zoom in. Just a zoom in.
Jordan's like, this is the shittest wedding I've ever been to.
Love it. But no, it looked like a great experience, lads. You know, it really looked like a fantastic experience, and you know, lots of fans were out there. We knew a few, obviously, the likes of Mitch and Adam P and various others were out there. It just looked like a really, really good experience. That's for sure. But look, we were there to train, we were there to play, and boy, did we! It was a fantastic victory, a 5-0 smashing of Al Hilal. Obviously, they're one of the champions and winning their version of the Champions League over there. It was a really sort of convincing win. So, Dom, I'll come to you with this one. You know, just watching that game, you know, were you expecting that sort of result? What were you expecting from Newcastle going into that sort of friendly, and how pleasing was it to see us play as well as we did?
Yeah, it's hard to say after a month off. Do Newcastle pick up right where they left off, keep that intensity? And it's fair to say they did. I think the first half, Joe Linton obviously played really well, got the 2 goals. And the second half was probably where Newcastle's fitness side of things, the intensity really sort of shone through, with Miguel Almiron adding a couple more. He could have even had a hat-trick as well, hitting the bar so soon after coming on. And I think when you look back at the January game against Al Ittihad, who are another well-fancied club in Saudi Arabia, Al Hilal are arguably the superior club, having won the Saudi League. And the game back in January was quite a close, cagey, feisty game. And this one, I mean, it was still physical. I think Al Hilal resorted to pretty much fouling Newcastle towards the end of the game. And that just shows how far, to a degree, Newcastle have come in the space of 12 months, really. And the intensity, it's a friendly game. You have to take it with a pinch of salt. But from what we've seen from Newcastle, the intensity and the sort of how clinical they were in front of goal and keeping Al Hilal at bay, particularly in the second half. I think in the first half, they did have a few chances, and that's where Loris Karius sort of shone through on his debut. And Mark Gillespie did make one or 2 decent saves as well. But yeah, I think couldn't have gone much better, bar the 2 injuries, which I'm sure we'll come on to. But in terms of the result and the performance, couldn't have gone much better.
Definitely. Boys, I know we've brushed along this already on previous shows, but look, you know, I can't help think, and I don't know whether I said it on Thursday on our previous show, I can't help think that, you know, we look like we could potentially hit the ground running when we get back into things. Are you guys of the same mindset? Chris, I'll come to you and I'll work round to Marty and Daz. Like, are you boys of the same mindset that we can hit the ground running, first of all against Bournemouth and then against Leicester over the Christmas period?
Yeah, I don't see why not, Pete. I mean, I think for our away days that we did with our lead, and obviously our lead was telling us a bit more, you know, about Al Hilal, and I think the prediction I gave was 2-0. But weirdly, you know, I'm in this new mindset now where like a clean sheet means everything. So for me, I was just thinking, you know, let's just keep a clean sheet. Let's win the game, bring the trophy home, which we discovered was up for grabs on the night, didn't we, Pete? Like, we didn't know there was a trophy involved. So, yeah, we're just thinking, keep a clean sheet, you know, professional. It's all about fitness. But to go and win 5-0, it just, like you say, it kind of gives you that belief that we are going to hit the ground running, and that, you know, we've been working really hard over in Riyadh. I'm sure, you know, Jordan will be able to expand on that a bit more, but by the looks of things, we're going to resume how we, you know, how we were playing before the season broke off for the World Cup. And if we bounce straight back into that Bournemouth game, you know, it sets us, having this cup game is great because it sets us up nicely for that Boxing Day fixture. And as we all know, Leicester away is going to be a difficult game. There's been a big gap between the World Cup. A lot of our players haven't played any football, so the fact that they've had that extra time in Riyadh with Eddie Howe and the training and the coaching staff, that can only benefit us. And there's going to be a lot of players who aren't going to be available for the first couple of games back in the season, and I think that's where we'll gain a bit of an advantage. Leicester really picked up towards the back end of before the break, so it's going to be a tough test, but I'm really looking forward to it, and yeah, just bring it on. I think if we can get through the Bournemouth game, there's no reason why we can't go to the King Power on Boxing Day and pick something up.
No, I agree. I think that it's all to play for. Mark, I'll come to you with this. Obviously, we'll touch on it really lightly before we move on to other things. But I can't remember whether you mentioned it or not. But was there any player that really kind of stood out for you that really impressed you in that performance? That you think actually, it could be a really good second half of the season for them?
I think there was some good performances from quite a few players. I thought Joe Linton was probably the best player over the certainly first half and into the second. Miggy did well when he came on, but I think more so it was good to see the younger lads get a run out. It was good to see them get their time and go on the trip. I think it's a huge exposure for them and good of the likes of Eddie and the management team to bring the young lads with them, that not only just experience to travel, get to Saudi, but to get game time. And I think a lot of people looked at it and said, oh, it's it's a nice kind of winter warming camp and whatever. But Al Hilal are a good team. They're one of the most decorated teams in their division and in their area. So I think as an opposition, they can't be written off or kind of made to look inferior, because I thought they played okay. There was a couple of niggly fouls, as Jordan and Dom said, towards the back end. The one, with Miggy down the back of the calf, I thought was a little bit naughty. Yeah. So bits like that. But I thought they all done well. I thought Fraser did well when he came on. I thought Shelby did good. So I think it was good to see those players get that time. I think the important thing for me with the games coming back, and I think I said this on Thursday, is the big difference is Eddie Howe and the team of coaches. Because I don't believe for 1 minute, despite the time off or anything else, that any of that intensity, the desire or the passion to win games will have dropped off at any point throughout this lull. So I fully expect them to come back in the same vein, if not better, with the same level of fitness, if not better, with the same level of intensity, if not more, and with that team going at it. And I think the other blessing that we've got, albeit England are out, was that, much to our malign, a lot of our players didn't get a run out. So we've got, barring possibly Wilson with a little strain, unless the lads can tell us more, we've got Trippier, Pope, Wilson, Shaw and Bruno all coming back and should be good to fire and get going again in the league. So I think we will do really well those next few games. I think we'll kick on like we finished. I would fully expect. I don't think Howe is the type of man just to let the team rest on the laurels and we just drift. I think we'll just crack on.
No, definitely. And you mentioned some of the young lads as well. This lad, Dylan Stevenson, was the one that scored quite late on. Great to see those young players coming on, like you said, Martin.
Took his goal well. He
did. Great balling from Fraser. A great finish. Not easy at all. But look, I know we've talked about him a lot. We'll talk about it a little bit more. Daz, how good is it that this guy has hit the ground running and is ready to go? It looks like again for the second third of the season.
Oh, it's brilliant. And look at it. It's an area that Newcastle were going to be looking to strengthen. Remember in the summer we thought they were looking at a right winger. They don't need to look for a right winger now. Miggy's on fire. He right at the end of last season, his run started and continued through the summer with Paraguay, and then the rest is history. He just, even in pre-season, he was on fire as well. So looking forward to seeing him back. And he took his 2 goals well when he came on as a sub in the friendly game as well. So happy that he's we can keep him fit as well, and he doesn't pick up an injury, because we definitely would miss him now if he got injured. But I want to also, Pete, say thank you to Tampa Toon for the donation to the channel as well. Back to Premier League business. Away the lads and lasses. Thanks, Tampa Toon.
Yes.
Cheers, fella. Great
Cheers,
stuff.
mate. Thank you.
Definitely. But no, great points as always, Daz, with regards to that. Jordan, I'm going to come back to you because Martin touched on a couple of bits, and it was the concerns around both Wood and Joe Linton. Now, I think you wrote a little something with regards to injuries, and there was a little bit of an update. What is the situation from Eddie Howe's perspective? Should we be concerned going into sort of next week, Bournemouth game, or is it something that actually that they'll be fit and ready to go by then?
No, I think they'll be both fine. I think in games like that, if you feel something, you've got to come off as a precaution. It's not worth worsening it basically. So Chris Wood felt something going. I think he's lower back, but Eddie Howe said afterwards he didn't think it's too serious. And the same goes for Joe Linton as well. I think he felt something in his hamstring. I think it was. But say it in them type of games, you just need to get the players off and not risk them. Which is, I say, in terms of Chris Wood, it's really important that he does remain fit, because I know England have been knocked out now, but it could be a case that I think there's 10 days to go until the game, or 9 days now until the next game in terms of the competitive season. But it looks like that Chris Wood's probably going to lead the line, because Alexander Isak, by the sounds of it, isn't going to be back fit. Prior to the World Cup break, Eddie Howe said he'd expected the player to be back in contention for the 2 friendlies, but then when we were in Riyadh, he ruled out him for both games as well. So it looks like Chris Wood's going to start the cup game at least, so that they do need him fit. Otherwise, they could probably not have a fully fit striker because of Callum Wilson in this situation. Not that because Callum Wilson's injured, but they could just give him sort of the time off as they have for the previous 2 games as well. But Joe Linton, I think both players will be fine. So it's just one of them things where in games like that, just get them off the field and not risk them.
Yeah.
And is Isaac's just fitness purely, or is the still the groin or whatever it is, the thigh, is that still an issue, or is it just literally he's just not at fitness levels of where Eddie and the lads want him to be?
Yeah, I mean I can't say for definite, but I think it's just a fitness issue in terms of the fact Newcastle train at very, very in high intensity. I managed to say that in Austria, Riyadh. I've seen the first 20 minutes of the training session. You can see sort of the motto is we're training the way we're playing. You could see that, and I think they're very reluctant to throw Alexander Isak back into that. So it's just about building them up in the gym, building up these sort of muscle mass, if you like, and then gradually build them back into the setup, because the last thing you want to do is put him straight in does he's groin his thigh again. So it's just about easing him back in, and it's a cliche as well, but he'll be like a new signing for the second half of the season. Going off what Eddie Howe sort of hinted at, I don't think we'll see him against Bournemouth in the cup, and I think possibly Leicester as well. So we might see him heading into the year, but I don't expect to see him for the Leicester game either, to be honest. Just take it and make sure when he does come back, he's fully fit and he can finally have a good run in the team, because it was sort of a promising start of his Newcastle career, where he had that game against Liverpool. Was a bit quiet against Crystal Palace and in Bournemouth, and the 2 St James's Park games as well. But £60 million have spent on him. He's a big asset, and they need him fit. So just take the time with him, and hopefully he has a strong second half of the season.
Yeah.
Jordan, quick one. When you were Chris was talking to himself there. Just when you were talking with Chris Wood, and after the first couple of games back, did you offer to help him and when he's moving to Leeds, or to even drive him down?
Yeah. So I don't think Chris Wood will be going anywhere, to be honest. I don't think many players will be leaving in January. It's speculation. Obviously, it's a report that's came outside of sort of the North East press pack. It's a report that's came from elsewhere, and from what I've been told, I don't think Chris Wood is going anywhere. And when you look at the situation at the minute when they've got Isak out and Callum Wilson it was on the way with England, but has now obviously come back into the setup. They may take time to bring him back in as well. They do need Chris Wood, and look, they've got a cup run to go at, and if Chris Wood impresses against Bournemouth, then he could only be the striker that leads them in the quarterfinals or the semi-finals as well. So keep the faith for Chris Wood.
He's turned you. What did he do to you out there? Because you were all against him before you left, and now he's you've turned to the dark side, Jordan.
No, Dom can back us up, but he's actually really, really nice bloke.
I think he is.
Yeah, he's like, and when I speak to players and I get a feel for them on a personal level, I am sort of reluctant to criticise them. So, team Chris Wood will be
To be fair, the way you hear he knocked out Dele Alli, or supposedly, I think everyone's a little bit worried about him now, about calling him out just because they don't know how he's going to respond. But no, to be fair, he does seem like a really nice guy.
If he doesn't lead, though, do you think there's possibly an opportunity that they would push, say, Miggy further up, and maybe put Fraser on that right, or ASM on the right, and Willock over to the left, or Joe Linton, and like there is room for movement. But I'm just thinking, like, from a point of players that are actually scoring goals and seem to have a bit of a golden touch at the moment, with that scoring, I just wonder, is there maybe if the two boys aren't ready, if Isaac's definitely not going to be there and Wilson's still got a little bit of a niggle, and you're using, say, Wood for the cup runs, I wonder, is there a choice to push Miggy just that bit further forward and maybe play SM off him, or play Joe Linton just off him, or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably go with St. Maxim in the striker position, because I think during the game in Riyadh, and St. Maxim went as a central striker when Chris Wood went off. And he played there a couple of games last season. I think he played there at Anfield last year as well. But I'd be reluctant to sort of switch around Miggy anyway because of his form. After the summer transfer window, I was in the mind that Newcastle United really needed to sign a right winger. Now Almiron's form has just been quite incredible, where I almost discard that position as needing to be strengthened now as well. So, I suppose they've got options. Isak's only just around the corner. Callum Wilson as well. I know there's talk about his England injury, but I think he's fine. At Newcastle as well, I think he always picks up little knocks, but it's just the type of player as he is. He's very explosive, but Newcastle know how to manage him. So, there's no reason to be concerned. They've got plenty of options up there. Joe Linton as well is probably still an option that could look to play in the striker position as well. So, they've got options there.
I think, to be fair, I think Callum Wilson, I think he trained a couple of days before the France game anyway, so I think it'll be the case that he'll be back and ready to go. Alan St. Maximin, funnily enough, he when Wood was subbed off at Molineux away at Wolves, he played up front when he scored that wonder goal. He was playing as a central striker at that point. Obviously, he did his hamstring then, and we haven't seen him since. But it's going to be an interesting one. I for one, I don't know whether any of you agree. Just before we move off Isaac, I for one am slightly concerned about Isaac and the length of that injury, because it's not like he injured himself, and I've said it before. It's not like he injured himself in the Chelsea game just before the break. He was off for about 4 or 5 weeks beforehand. And I know he had a relapse and he kind of re-injured it just as he was about to come in. But that's a long time for what seems like a torn. It must be a torn thigh. I know they said thigh strain, but it has to be torn. Like, you're not off that length of time for a strain. It just doesn't make sense. And it just.
But you think if it was anything more serious, though, Pete, that there would have been surgery or something. If it was a complete tear or a rupture, or unless that's, I'm sure the lads would have heard if there was anything like that. But it is a long time for something supposedly so innocuous that he has taken that time before and a relapse. So it is slightly worrying. But he's a young lad, and I think I've always said, and you guys know this last season, right up to the point when we'd Rafa and the rest of them there, I've always said I think we've a much better medical team now than we've had at the club in a long time. So I think, we'll obviously get him to a point, but obviously I think, like me, a lot of fans just want to see him out in a black and white shirt and scoring goals. It's just, and I'm sure he's as disappointed as we are. I'm sure he just wants to play as well and trying to settle coming from a new club, and especially when you got a price tag like that, you just want to be in the team scoring goals, contributing. So it's a shame.
On the subject of Isak, and I'd be interested to hear Jordan and Dom's views on this, because I've said now for a long time, like for me, Isak's got to play through the middle. But I know that some people are saying that when he does eventually get into the team, people wouldn't want to see Callum Wilson dropped. Maybe there's a change in formation. Maybe he plays on the wing. But Jordan, Dom, what are your thoughts on Alexander Isak? Do you think long-term Eddie Howe might look to change the formation? Do you think Callum Wilson drops to the bench? Or do you think Alexander Isak will be played on either the right or the left?
I think it's hard to see where Callum Wilson would drop out the team, given if he's fit, he's first choice striker. It's just the fact that there's question marks over whether he will be fit over the course of a full season. Isak would be the central striker, as he was when Callum Wilson was injured before his injury. Just on his injury, what I will say is, as a 23-year-old, when he arrived at Newcastle, I looked at his career, and he'd never really picked up any sort of serious injury. This is pretty much the most serious injury he's picked up in his career, which you can take as a good thing or potentially a bad thing, and because it's about how he responds to that, and that will be interesting. But I think a lot of the talk has been in terms of if you can try and get Isak and Wilson in the same team, it would be Wilson through the middle, Isak potentially out on the left, where that position is still a little bit up for grabs. Alan St-Maximin hasn't started since August. Jacob Murphy's came into the side for a bit. Ryan Fraser's been in and out. So that position is almost primed for Isak. If he does come back, say, post-Christmas for the new year, that is almost his to win, almost. And that's the way I'd see it trying to almost shoehorn Wilson and Isak into the team, because you don't spend £60 million on a striker or forward player for him not to play. And it's going to be difficult for Eddie Howe. And in terms of formation, Eddie Howe's never really, other than when he first arrived, when Newcastle was so sort of regimented into that sort of three centre-back formation, Eddie Howe, since really getting his feet under the table at Newcastle, hasn't really deviated from a sort of 4-3-3 setup. So I couldn't see that happening to accommodate one player, albeit a record signing. But for me, Wilson when fit, and then potentially we'll see how Isak would do out on that left side.
Yeah, I think when you look at when Bruno first came in January, and he had that sort of settling in period where I think he didn't start till about the seventh game. I think there's a case to probably do that with Isak if Callum Wilson is fit, because I think Isak only started against Liverpool, Crystal Palace, and Bournemouth because Wilson was out, and ultimately Chris Wood wasn't that runner in behind, or someone that's going to run the channels and make a run in behind as well. So they were desperate for someone like Isak to come in. But as Eddie Howe is done with signings, particularly Bruno as well, he ideally is wanting to give him a little bit of time to watch on from the bench, get used to training, and then slowly build them up into the starting 11. And that's probably what will happen with Isak. Let's see if Wilson is fit. Isak was probably thrown in straight away because he had no one else. But in terms of the strongest team, it's really difficult to say, because they've signed Isak as a centre forward. So to shoehorn him into the team on the left hand side, they might have to do that to get both players in. But they could ultimately pair Wilson and Isak against each other to go and get the number the striking spot. We talk about competition, and Newcastle are trying to build a team with immense competition. And imagine having two players in Isak and Callum Wilson battling out for a starting spot. It's strength and depth. And look, I'm a big fan of Callum Wilson. I think he's well, as we've seen, he's the best striker away from Harry Kane. I know some people might not say that now after what happened on Saturday, but that's the way it is. But they've got a player there who they've paid £60 million for, and who's fighting for his place as well. So to have them two players vying for one spot is very exciting. And I want that all over the pitch, because to be a world-class team and a successful team, you've got to have two excellent players in one position.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, great points. Look, a few more points and definitely a few questions I can already see being tagged. So we'll get to them shortly. But look, 200 in the chat. Thank you for taking your Monday evening, or taking time on Monday evening to come and listen to us talk all things Newcastle United. But of course, whilst you're there, we're double teaming here, Daz. Like and comment as always, and of course, hit that subscribe button. We are 170 or under 170 away from hitting that 5K subscribers. So help us along the way on our journey to hit that target. And thank you for your support on all things Loaded Mag NUFC. Lads, I wanted to come and you touched on the likes of Callum Wilson and one or two other players. There was the question mark about when will those boys return. Now, Martin, you mentioned earlier about the fact that actually they haven't played a lot of football, so it should really fall into our favour. But do we know, lads, like Jordan, Dom, do we know, have you heard anything about when potentially these boys will be coming back? In particular, you got the England boys, and of course you got Bruno Guimaraes and Fabian Schär. Have we heard anything? Is there any confirmation? Will they make Bournemouth, for example? What's the story at the moment, lads?
Yeah, it's unconfirmed at the minute, but Eddie Howe was asked about it last week, and he said that he'd take each player on an individual basis. So I don't know. See, you look at Nick Pope didn't play any minutes at all. Callum Wilson played there and then. Kieran Trippier played 2 games. Bruno played, I think it was 2 substitute appearances. So, and Eddie Howe also mentioned that there was players desperate to come back and be involved. So, I think ideally they would want to give them a bit of time off. Obviously, I think they've got a full week now up until the Bournemouth game that they could give them off. But then obviously if they come back on the Monday or whatever, then the games are Tuesday, so they might be back in training but not be up for selection against Bournemouth. Then again, they could as well. As I say, it is unconfirmed, but I think the exits this week will probably give them a chance of at least making that Leicester City game. The Bournemouth game, I think, is a bit up in the air. But look, as Eddie Howe mentioned, players are desperate to come back. So if Bruno says he wants to play, then who are Newcastle to say no? So we'll just have to wait and see. But nothing confirmed yet.
Yeah, I think it's a silver lining of England, Brazil, Switzerland even getting knocked out relatively early, or probably earlier than expected. I think always the plan or the anticipation would be try and get them back for the Leicester game, the Bournemouth game, unless we're talking a disastrous competition for any of those nations, would probably come too soon. So, yeah, I think Eddie Howe was saying some players would be keen to come back, and in terms of the time off, they could potentially get that later in the season at some point if there was ever a gap in matches. But certainly, the players seem keen to come back based on what Eddie Howe was saying, and I think the Leicester game's the most realistic game for that. But you never know if a player's particularly keen and can get back in training, and Eddie Howe wants to select him, then you never know for the Bournemouth game. But I'd certainly expect the Leicester game for the 5 players at the World Cup.
I think it's slightly different for me in the fact of the timing of the World Cup. It's not like a summer tournament where they might have did the Euros or whatever, and then you're only kind of getting them back for pre-season. So summer loving like me and blast. You're only, do you know what I mean? In that fact, like, season's finished, a lot of players go off to a tournament ends, they kind of get that. You're getting the first batch of lads back for pre-season, but these lads are off, having their summer holidays, having their downtime, whatever. So I think the timing with this tournament, in the fact it was kind of like slap bang in the middle of the season, you don't really have these lads now heading off on their holidays. Yeah. So, I suppose it's like it's anybody naturally doing a job kind of thing, and especially if you haven't really played as much as you would have wanted to. Like, why would you not want to get back to your club and get straight back into a black and white shirt? So I think it's a bit of a good thing in the way that the tournament was in the winter, because you don't have that extension of time away, maybe.
That's what I was going to ask you, boys. I was going to say that do they need a break? Do they really need one?
I think so.
If it wasn't for the World Cup, they'd have been playing all the way through anyway.
All the way through.
They've had their break in the summer. I get from a time difference. I think, is it right, Jordan? It's 3 hours ahead, right? Over sort of in the Middle East. So yeah, I get that in terms of maybe a few days to get back into the time difference. But in terms of playing, Mark, I'm with you, Chris. Gaz,
it's not a major jet lag factor, is it? It's not like going to South America.
Yeah. And the other thing is, imagine when they're playing in even friendly games, they might play a friendly game on a Wednesday, and then they're back, and they may make a squad on a Saturday or Sunday. So I don't think they need that much time off. And I agree with what most you're saying there, that they haven't played much football. They must be chomping at the bit to get back and play a full match again, or at least contribute to 60 minutes of a game. I'm sure Bruno is dying to play.
They've been away with their respective squads, but it's not like they haven't been training.
Yeah,
so, in theory, the fitness shouldn't be gone. So unless it's you're coming back with an injury or a niggle, and that needs to be, as Jordan said and Dom, that the club need to manage that when they get the players back in. At the end of the day, no disrespect, like these lads are professional athletes. Why do you need another break for? Sure, you won't come in May. Get on with it.
You agree, Chris?
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, especially the three that we're talking about. In fact, you can add Bruno and Scurr to that as well, really, can't you? Because I think Scurr started the last game for Switzerland, which unfortunately they were absolutely hammered in. And from what I gather, he may have got the odd few minutes here and there, but he didn't start any of the other games. Bruno came on for 2 of the matches and then was not seen again. Trippier started the first England match, didn't start again. Pope didn't get any minutes, and I think Callum Wilson probably had less than a half. Am I right in saying that?
Holiday had.
What, sorry?
They had more of a holiday than Jordan did. Really.
Yeah.
Jordan didn't get to see Boulevard Avenue or Boulevard World and all those places out there that they look cool, actually, though. Those places.
Guys,
I mean, if they
Missy might be listening. He might be. He's meant to be working.
If they'd have gone to Riyadh, they'd have probably worked harder, wouldn't they? Because at least at Riyadh, they probably would have had a full 90 minutes.
Yeah. Not wrong at all. Look, the questions are flowing in, and some really good questions as well. So I'm just a couple of things that will probably be as part of the questions, but one of them in particular that I wanted to mention as well. And to be fair, Jordan and Dom, you've both kind of written about this, and this is about Loris Karius. We talked about his performance in the friendly last week. And look, Jordan, you wrote about it as well, and Dom, you've wrote a little something about this too, with regards to Loris Karius. Dom, I'll start with you. What is the situation? Obviously, you've got some quotes on there with regards to Loris Karius himself. What do you think the situation will be? Do you think there'll be a new deal in the pipeline? Would you keep him?
Yes to both of those. I think the club wouldn't ask Loris Karius if he's keen to stay if there wasn't something planned, and he wouldn't reply, "There's a good chance I'm going to stay," if there wasn't something in the works. I think talks will take place within the next couple of weeks, and I think January is probably where a deal will be done, probably until the end of the season, potentially longer. But 29-year-old goalkeeper, whether he's happy being second choice to Nick Pope, or he sort of implied that he wants to get playing regularly again as well. So there's probably that caveat to consider as well. But if he can potentially start the League Cup game against Bournemouth, he's probably the sort of first choice for that now, given his performance in the friendly game and the fact Caldolo was obviously ill as well. So that's something to consider as well. So for me, I think it's hard to judge based on 45 minutes whether he should get a new contract. He could have a shocker against Bournemouth, but based on what Eddie Howe's been saying, he's been very impressed by him, impressed by his attitude and the sort of his sort of persona around the club, his attitude to training, things like that. So he seems to fit that sort of personality Eddie Howe wants in his players. So seems like the right type of person to have in the club, and I wouldn't argue against offering him a contract at least until the end of the season.
Yeah, Jordan, I'll put it to you slightly differently. Gary's just put in the chat: keep Karius, sell Darlow. Would you agree with that potential, or would you keep them both with them maybe transitioning one out in the summer?
Can I add something there, Pete, before Jordan answers? And you're not meeting Keith Darlow next week for an interview, right now, yeah? Before you answer here. Carry on.
Also to add on to that, sorry, Jordan, just to give it a third part, where does that then leave Dubravka?
Right. I'll try and remember the three questions. I've got a really bad memory, so I'll try and keep them in. So the first question: would I keep Karius and sell Darlow? I don't know. It's a really difficult one because I think Darlow's for a second choice goalkeeper has had really good spells in the team. I think there was a spell under Bruce, or twice under Bruce, where Dubravka had been out injured and Darlow had came in and done a really good job. Sort of fell away at the end, and Dubravka naturally came back in. But I think if you compare the two careers, take away that Liverpool the Champions League final for Karius, because ultimately his career has been defined on that, which is very harsh. He's took the criticism for it now. It was 4 years ago. Let's move on from that. Loris Karius was signed as Liverpool's #1 goalkeeper, so he's clearly got credentials. Unfortunately, his career just took a bad spin after that one game. I think if you look at the experience between the two, then you probably argue that Karius is a better #2 behind Nick Pope. So I don't want to answer the question because I think it is harsh. But if you weigh it up in terms of experience in football, then you'd probably say Karius has got a better shout at being a #2. What was the second question? I forgot already.
Oh man.
Never mind.
Where's it leave Dubravka? Is that right? Is it where
Yeah.
Dubravka?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
I mean, Eddie Howe said that the door's been left open to Dubravka. But for me, and I think probably a lot of fans would say this as well, it does feel like bridges have been burnt a little bit because his comments in the summer fans didn't take too kindly to when he left the football club. So I think Dubravka, there's a strong chance Dubravka will be sold. There's still a possibility he could end up joining Manchester United on a permanent basis because I think there's a £6 million release clause at the end of the season. Newcastle also have an option to recall Dubravka in January, but Dubravka seems quite happy being a #2. The Geath, you can call it that, number 3 or whatever he is, because I think he's made one competitive appearance, so he's quite happy to do that. That's fair enough to him because I think I'd mentioned previously on the show, in terms of his career, he's played in some sort of average leagues, and to be at Manchester United is probably a dream for him. So he's happy where he is. Newcastle are coping without him, so I think naturally that leaves Dubravka in a vulnerable position of leaving the football club at some point, and that's fair enough because look, they've got in the summer I said that Nick Pope was probably a slight upgrade on Martin Dubravka, but as I tend to be proven, I've been proved very wrong as always, because Nick Pope's been levels above Dubravka. And then a #2 like Karius, someone that's happy to be a #2 and has that experience, I think I'd be quite happy with that, yeah.
Look, it's easy to forget sometimes. When you got a new player coming in, Nick Pope comes in, everyone's excited about him. It's easy to forget sometimes what a player beforehand has done for you. There's no doubt Martin Dubravka has been a fantastic goalkeeper for Newcastle United. There's no doubt about that. But you could see, in the last year, we talked about it on Loaded so many times, the injuries that were creeping in to his seasons, and he's only playing half a season or a chunk of a season here because of injuries, and you're then having to rely on Darlow that you wouldn't really want as a first choice goalkeeper, no matter what he's done when he's stepped in, certainly for long parts of the season, and it becomes frustrating then. To what ideally we should have had is Pope come in and Martin Dubravka trying to push him as far as possible. He clearly didn't want that. For me, he's chased the status. He's not bothered whether he plays for Man United or not, but he can say on his CV that he's played for Man United, and that's all he wants, because that'll probably secure him another move down the line. The fact that he's coming from Man United, and that's that. But the comments, for me, and I think for a lot of other fans, like, look, Daz, Martin, Chris, I don't know whether you agree with this. Before we move on, that is, for me, they're unforgivable. Like, you don't make comments like that. You referring to Man U as United, and openly putting that out. I think he put that out on the day he signed, or the day.
It was like 4 hours after he signed.
Doing stuff like that. Yeah. We all know what Newcastle fans are like. We look at everything with a fine tooth comb, microscopic. We look at every little detail. He would have known, we'd have seen that, and Newcastle fans didn't like it. Simple as that. So, boys, I don't know. You want to touch on this before we move to questions?
He's not coming back.
Go on.
He won't come back.
That's simple. I don't think he's coming back.
He must have known. Either for the comment to go up, whether it was him or a PR team or whoever it is manages his Instagram account or whatever it is. It was a stupid thing to do for a player that's gone on loan. So for me, I agree with you, Pete. I think the thing was very good. I think the thing was he didn't want to fight for his place. So that to me says more about his character, in that he didn't want to stay and fight and try and keep that number 1 jersey. So if he didn't want to stay and fight, he didn't want to put his effort into the club, then listen, crack on, matey, and enjoy the rest of your career, whatever you're doing. Thanks for the time you were there, but next.
Yeah.
Just to bring it very briefly back onto Karius as well, I think, when we first signed Karius, a lot of my Liverpool mates, were all laughing about it. But I think some fans will just remember Karius from, obviously, that Champions League final when he had the nightmare against Real Madrid. But as some people have rightly said, you don't end up playing for Liverpool in the Champions League final if you're not half decent. So when you compare the likes of Karius to the likes of Carl Darlow, it's different levels. So for us to bring in Karius as a number 2, who's got the European experience, he's played in some of the biggest games that you can play in club football. To have him at 29 years of age on a free is what a fantastic number 2. And if he's pushing, if he's willing, like Martin's just said, if he's willing to come in as the number 2 and say to Nick Pope, I want your jersey, that's what we want. We want healthy competition, and hopefully we'll be fighting on many fronts over the next few years, whether that be Europe, whether that be in cups. So he's got plenty of opportunities to try and cement that number 1 place, and who knows, he could end up ousting Nick Pope from the number 1 jersey. So I personally, I would get rid of Carl Darlow, because I think we've been like that over him now for a couple of seasons, and I'd give Karius the opportunity to try and make the number 1 shirt his own, but if not, a very, very accustomed and experienced number 2.
Yeah, sounds fair. Let's see what happens in January. But look, so many questions, even more coming in now for Dom and Jordan to go through. So Daz, what have we got from? I'm sure I've seen a couple of them. There's some good ones. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm going to go straight away. I'll start at the top and work down. There are some brilliant questions. I think I have 19 things start. But right. Dom, I think I'm going to you with this one from your article today. But evening, lads and lasses, any truth in the rumour Newcastle are interested in João Felix? As Ben Jacobs has mentioned, Newcastle are interested in buying him. And I know you had the article you put out today, and he's a player that looks like he's going to be on the move in January. Fabrizio Romano has mentioned it as well. And there's talks of his agent coming in. What can you tell us, Dom?
Yeah, that's basically it. João Felix is obviously a player who, in January, looking to get a move. Newcastle, it's an obvious link if you want a Premier League move. that's basically as far as the situation is. His agent coming over this week for talks. Newcastle, Aston Villa, the clubs listed. Manchester United and Chelsea also interested, I believe. Whether a deal has any real chance of getting done, I'm not really. I can't really see it, to be honest. But it's one of those. It hasn't come from the club. It's come from the sort of agent side of things, and we're looking at a sort of transfer rumour mill surrounding João Felix just in time for the start of the January transfer window. So he's a player who I can see leaving Atletico Madrid. He's obviously signed for massive money from Benfica, 113 million pounds back in 2019, and hasn't really fully settled under Diego Simeone. I don't think he's broke double figures in La Liga in 3.5 seasons since he signed. So ultimately, for an attacking player, you want more. And Atletico Madrid, the play style, the sort of regimented defensive approach, ultimately limits him. We've seen at the World Cup, he is a flair player, a player who can sort of express himself in a free-flowing attacking system. And unfortunately, that's just not really what Atletico Madrid are about. So Newcastle, funnily enough, it would be an ideal sort of, would fit the bill. But I think the finances just wouldn't really work for Newcastle at the moment. Eddie Howe and all noises from the club suggesting Newcastle are going to be quite conservative, and we're talking maybe 1-2 transfers in January, and potential maybe a player or two will go out as well. But in terms of a move for a player who is still one of the most expensive players of all time, I can't see it happening. But talks obviously taking place this week.
Cool. Cheers, Tom.
I'll just add on here, just to make the Aston Villa fans happy. Barstool Football have said João Felix has no interest in Aston Villa, a team and a city unattractive to the player who prefers an entity with more substance and history. Who's going to tell him Aston Villa has more Champions League than Atletico? But the Aston Villa fans are not happy with regards to that, and they're already crying into their bed sheets already. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. Just to
The
make
truth hurts.
Nice link in, Pete. Just before we leave João Felix, just to talk, we won't even answer this, but just a thought. Where do we play Madison and João Felix when we sign them both in January? So just think about that, lads. We won't answer it though. We'll let Eddie sort that problem out. Right, Jordan. A question for you. It was a good one here around. From Jeremy. Question for Jordan: since there is a cup, obviously with the friendly trip, did you get any indications this would be an annual thing?
No, I didn't get anything official from the club. That would be an annual thing, but I think there was, and this is really tedious, but there was a photo on Newcastle United's official Twitter account saying, "Oh, thank you, Riyadh. See you soon." And naturally, with the links to the owners, then it probably will be a place that they'll go to for a mid-season trip, depending on obviously the schedule. Now, I think last season there was a winter break. I think that's going to continue in seasons ahead. Obviously, it's different this season because of the World Cup. So I think that would be a natural base for Newcastle to go, well, that's Riyadh or Jeddah or elsewhere as well. But certainly in the Middle East, there'll be a base for Newcastle to go away for a week and do a warm weather training camp. In terms of the Diriyah Season Cup, then I think that always happens in December. In the schedule next year, I don't think would allow Newcastle to go there because obviously they'll be in a full fixture list. So maybe not be the Diriyah Season Cup that they compete for, but that they'll probably end up going there once a season, or it could be in pre-season where Al Hilal are invited over here to play for another potential trophy that's made up to create links between the two clubs and obviously links between the two nations as well.
Okay, cheers, Jordan. A question for both of you here, and there's been a few players that talked about exiting in January, and this comes from KSA man. But yeah, the likes of Fraser has been linked to Southampton, I think. Wood, we mentioned, and you've quashed that now, Jordan, and to Leeds, and Richie to Portsmouth. But and who do you think may potentially leave in January?
Just don't want to go for it.
Yeah, I think Eddie Howe's already said he doesn't expect too many players to leave, but obviously if you want players in, you're going to have to make space. I think Ryan Fraser's an interesting one. Obviously, he's been linked with moves away to other Premier League clubs. I'd be surprised to see him leave. Certainly in the early stages of the window, it depends how it plays out. Obviously, it can be quite unpredictable, but Matt Ritchie was one. I think Eddie Howe spoke quite openly about how he could potentially leave in the summer, and ultimately that didn't happen, and he's barely featured since. So I think if the right offer comes along for someone like Matt Ritchie, who realistically doesn't have a place in the side at the moment, didn't play in the friendly currently. I mean, he's been nursing a calf injury as well. If the right offer comes along for him in January, I think the player, the club will have no qualms about letting him go. He's been a great servant to the club, and he's 33 now, I think, and it's probably the right time for him to leave. So I'd say he's probably the number one on my list. If a player had to leave this January, I'd probably say Matt Ritchie.
Cheers up.
Yeah, I think possibly. I don't think there'll be any major exits, if you can call it that, unless it's one in, one out. You might see a couple of loan exits. For example, the player that springs to mind for me is maybe a Jamal Lewis, because I know obviously he's been kept in and around the first team setup, and I think he's made a couple of substitute appearances. Played against Al Hilal and I thought he looked really rusty and a bit off the pace, to be honest. So I think he's really in need of a loan move for the second half of the season, just to get some regular game time and try and maintain his fitness and come back a player that Newcastle openly paid £12 million for from Norwich City. So I think there could be a couple of loan exits, like Sir Joe White, obviously not a first team player, but has been in and around the first team, if you like. Certainly before his injury in pre-season was a player that was training with the first team and was highly rated at Newcastle. Look, who knows what will happen with Elliot Anderson as well. Elliot Anderson could be one to go out on loan, because look, we all love Elliot Anderson, and he's got incredible ability, and we want to see local lads do well. And he's got a long-term future at Newcastle. But if you look at what's been out this season, he's only played a couple of substitute appearances, hasn't started in the Premier League, although he's started a couple of cup games, hasn't had that Premier League game time. So it could be best for his development to again go out on loan somewhere. But certainly permanent exits. I mean, Chris Wood's been mentioned. Don't think that'll happen. Ryan Fraser, yes, possibly, but I do doubt that. So yeah, just a couple of loans, I think.
Jordan, do you think Paul Dummett is ahead of Jamal Lewis in the pecking order at the minute?
No, because Paul Dummett's just, he's injured all the time, isn't he? There's no other way of putting it. Look, we found out in Saudi Arabia that he'd missed a lot of the first half of the season because of a calf injury. Now he's got a back injury as well. So, and this isn't just this season; it's been previous seasons, and it just seems to be that injuries are constantly catching up with him, and he can't stay fit. To be honest, I think he was offered a 1-year contract because he's one of them players behind the scenes that Eddie Howe really likes having around. Funny enough, it was a completely random question, but I asked Eddie Howe a few months ago about unsung heroes, and the two players he name dropped were Mark Gillespie and Paul Dummett. Now Mark Gillespie isn't in the 25-man squad, and Paul Dummett hasn't kicked the ball in the Premier League since I think January. So I think with them players, we talk about this sort of dressing room morale and the dynamics of the dressing room. They're two players I think that he sees value in and having them around the dressing room, but maybe in terms of a playing point of view or nowhere near. So I think Paul Dummett's 1 year, obviously he's going to sign a 1-year contract, so his contract's up in 6 months. Could be one in the summer where they just let him go, or if he's happy to stick around and not play and be like a dressing room cheerleader, then
yeah, you're right. we have too many mascots now. I don't think we're going to get rid of them in January, but there's somewhere we're definitely going to clear the deck. Oh, we have to. The players there now that have been hanging around for a long time that aren't like they're not getting even seen at the subs bench sometimes, you know. And even when they're on the subs bench, there's not even a hope that they'll ever come on. So like we could be on that subs bench at this stage, but
that's pushing it.
To be fair, though,
I'll have a word, Martin.
To be fair, I think Murphy's got more chance of getting game time than Dummett at the moment.
Yeah. Oh yes.
Your best friend.
And it's a question that came up, Pete. David asked about comment that he did play well. So what did you make of Alex Murphy, lads, and his cameo role there towards the end of the game? Well, got more than a cameo role.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good cameo. Read the game really well. You can tell he's a player that's really comfortable with the ball. I've watched him in a couple of the 21s matches. Dom as well would have, and he's always stood out for me as someone that looks like he can progress into the first team. Obviously signed from Ireland with a lot of potential, and I think you're beginning to see that. So, there's behind the scenes Newcastle want to promote under 21s players into the first team setup, and I think he's probably a prime example of someone that can go and do it. We'll talk about potential exit in January, and it might not. Probably makes sense to loan him out, get him that senior experience, and then he's sort of 6 months ahead of schedule when he returns in the summer to compete for certainly being around the first team as well. So yeah, I've been really impressed with him.
Look, we'll go with we talked about exits. You know this question is coming. It's coming. There's about 5 different versions of the question, but yeah, and you're probably not going to get into names, but people are asking who are targets for the January window. But maybe we'll go with Tom's version of the question about what areas do you think that we may need to strengthen in January. And you want to take that one on?
Can I have a little caveat onto that as well? Sorry, Dom, I just want to ask you an extra little bit to that, because I don't think we've asked yourself or Jordan this. Was there anybody at the World Cup that you saw and you thought, ooh, he'd be all right for Newcastle as well?
Right. I'm trying to think of the World Cup. Ironically, Gonzalo Ramos, who's a player who Newcastle looked at in the summer, scouted him, could have got him for, I think, £30 million. Didn't, went for Alexander Isak instead, more established professional. Gonzalo Ramos has obviously gone on to have a very, very good season so far for Benfica. I think he scored 14 goals in 20-odd games, 4 goals in 4 games, or 4 goals in 5 games now for Portugal since earning his first cap in November. Obviously, the only hat-trick we've seen at the World Cup so far. Chances of signing him in January are very unlikely, I'd say now, even though in the summer that looked like there was a chance something could be done. I think if you can get that sort of winger attacking midfielder in the mould of a James Maddison, whether it's him or someone else, I don't think the finances would maybe quite add up in terms of financial fair play. If we're talking the figures Leicester are asking for, but if you could get a player like that, it would add another dimension to Newcastle's attacking threat. But also, if you're looking further back as well, I think the right back position, the full back positions are areas where you could add a bit of depth. I think in terms of left back, we've seen Dan Burn play the majority of the season at left back, which in an ideal world, albeit Dan Burn has done a very good job, in an ideal world, you'd have a natural left back there. Matt Targett, as well as he did last season, just hasn't been able to get back in the team this season. So if you can get a bit more competition in left back, get another maybe young up and coming left back in, potentially if Jamal Lewis is to go out on loan, or if he's not really deemed capable of properly competing for a starting place in the Premier League, then potentially a young left back. And we've seen in terms of right back as well, at the moment, Javier Manquillo is the only fit right back at the club. with Trippier coming back from the World Cup and Emil Kraft obviously out injured as well. So there's been Harrison Ashby from West Ham, heavily linked in the summer. I wouldn't be surprised if that was a signing Newcastle made in January. Just a young player, bit of Premier League experience. Hopefully can only get better. So he's one who would be happy to be a number 2 or number 3 right back. So just strengthening the squad in key areas. So if injuries do come, then the team are ready for them, as well as adding a bit of first team ready quality as well would be ideal.
Yep. Cool. Cheers, Tom. Same question to you, Jordan. Positions that we might need look to strengthen, or any names if you want.
Yeah, so a young right back to play an understudy to Kieran Trippier, I think would make sense, because Javi Manquillo was the only fit right back under Trippier, and I think if Kieran Trippier was to get injured and Javi Manquillo, although has done a steady job for the football club, I think it would be a little bit of a disaster if they had to go the full season or the rest of the season with Javi Manquillo, when they're potentially pushing for a European spot. So I think they've got to bear that in mind. Yeah, Dom was right to mention Harrison Ashby, because that was a deal they tried to do on deadline day. Fell through at the last minute, but I think the player's only got 6 months left on his contract. So they could. I think it's probably more than likely that they will go and revisit that in January. And then for me as well, sort of a sitting central midfielder. Maybe not a starting one, but again another understudy maybe. To maybe someone like a John Joe Shelby, for example. I know the guy from Argentina, Maximo Perón's been mentioned. So that could be one to keep an eye on, because he fits the profile of being sort of a young up-and-coming player with bags of potential. So want to keep an eye on there. And I know having a sort of a sitting midfielder again, and I've spoken this on previous shows, although Bruno Guimaraes is great for the Newcastle in the role that he's in, I do like to see him push a little bit further forward in that number 8 role. So to have someone that can free Bruno up to go and push further forward and get amongst the goals as he did last season. I know he scored a few this season, but obviously last season when he first came into the side, Newcastle didn't necessarily sign him for goals, but when he played in that number 8 role, he's shown that he's probably best suited there as well. So right back, centre defensive, mid for me. If not, then another midfielder. There's talk of James Maddison, for example. I've seen a couple of people mention James Maddison, but I just want to maybe kill that now. I don't think James Maddison happens because of the finances involved in the deal. Again, it's a fully loaded transfer throwing the Grim Reapers back.
I'll do the 3-piece. You can't say that on this show. You can't say to douse those James Maddison in the flames, but Pete won't like it.
It's always going to be difficult in January. It is. Look, we spoke about it in the last show. Look, would we want him in January? Yes, because it will give him as a right push. I think there will be a bid. Whether we get him or not is another thing. I think Newcastle are going to show their intent, but that's just my opinion. Summer is the perfect position to get a player like him, but when we're chasing European potential Champions League football, do you do what we did in 2012 and go for another push and sign someone like, well, we signed like Papi Cisse that gave us the lift for the second half of the season. We didn't quite make it, but is Maddison the type of guy that could do that? Yes, but equally, there are so many other players that can do it as well. We're not just looking at one player anymore. We're looking at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players that can do that role. So, would I be disappointed if we didn't get Maddison, but we got somebody else? Like a Marcus Thuram or someone like that, or Goncalo Ramos or somebody else. Trossard.
Trossard for me is, if you don't get Maddison, I think Trossard's somebody that is a fair target.
Yeah. I wouldn't be mad at that if we went out and got somebody else. I just think we need to strengthen. We need to buy, and we need to be strong whilst we're in a strong position. This will, I'm not saying that we're not going to be in this position next year, but we're at our strongest point that we've been in 15 years. Sitting third in the league, going into January potentially. Like, we've not been in this position for so long. So if I'm thinking it, if some of us around the panel are thinking it, surely the owners are thinking, well, let's strengthen now while we can.
Yeah.
Just in back to Dom and Jordan here, right? So both Dom and Jordan are in the press conferences with Eddie Howe, and Jordan, you were over there with Eddie, and this question came up, and that's where you wrote the article. So I know sometimes you can't believe him when he does his team talks and stuff like that. So do you think he give any? Did he give an anthem away, or like do you really like the indication we're getting is that nothing much is happening unless something out of the blue happens? But because we're talking about names, we'll continue talking about names right through January. But do you think there's going to be a surprise somewhere along the line? Either.
So yeah, I mean, the official line is that don't expect too much. Obviously, don't expect lavish spending in terms of what they spent over the last two windows. That came from Eddie Howe himself. You mentioned financial fair play, as he always does. So I'll stick with the official line, and what I've been told by him is that they're not intending to be too busy. If they do sign players, there'll probably be a couple of players, maybe younger options. But what I would say to that as well is I sat here in January last year. Oh, sorry, not January last year. In the summer, and I said, financial fair play will restrict Newcastle United from spending. They'll not spend that much money. They'll not go and spend £60 million on Alexander Isak, for example. They went and did it. So maybe don't listen to journalists and don't listen to Eddie Howe and just dream away. Because we keep getting told not to expect lavish spending. They go and I think they spend over 100 million in the summer as well. But this time it does feel hard to believe that they will go and spend that, because in January last year they had to spend money to get themselves out of the danger that they were in the summer as well. Obviously, it was to strengthen the squad even more. They've got themselves in a position now where they're third in the Premier League, and Peter made a good point to say that, look, they're in that position now. They haven't been in this position for years. Let's go and spend the money to ensure that they do stay there. And I know from an owner's point of view, they would like to do that, because I don't know if everyone's seen, but the players Eddie Howe were invited up to Yasser Al-Rumayyan's house, and Yasser Al-Rumayyan was saying, look, you've done brilliant first half of the season, but we want more. But I think in terms of the finances, I think it might be hard to go and splash, say, a £50 million bid on James Maddison, for example. I just don't see them spending that kind of money in the January transfer window. But as I mentioned earlier, I've said that in the past and they've went and done it. So just don't listen to me.
So you're telling us there's a chance, Jordan? You're telling us?
I mean, if you want to go off the previous transfer windows, and there's a chance. But Simon, it does Simon, feel good for this thing.
Where is it, Simon?
Northeast Journal says there's a chance. Breaking news. I think the interesting one, I think Eddie's never going to give nothing away. I think obviously there's a strategy. I think it was interesting from Yasser's comment about, it's great we're in third, but like we definitely want to do more. So I think it'll be interesting to see if we keep up the pace and we kind of remain in those European places, and we start getting the likes of Isaac back, and they bring in a couple of additions, be it youth or whatever else, to bump up the squad and fill the numbers and give the backup. But I thought Jamie Rubin put something on Twitter. I think obviously somebody was talking to him out there, and I think he made probably the same comment as we got in the summer window, which was, we're looking to do what's right for the club. We're not going to say we're going to go out and spend 200 million, but if the right player comes up for the club, we will spend. Yeah. And I think that was the attitude in the summer. We're not going to go out and just blow 200 million, because even if you go out and you did spend 60 or 100 million in January, it doesn't guarantee success. So I think the club will still remain on target to do what they've done. And I think that's why the likes of Simon Jordan and, some of these other pundits were shocked, because they expected Newcastle just to go, right, there's 500 million, go and buy a load of superstars. But the club hasn't done that. The owners have been very astute with what they bought. They bought experience. They bought youth. They're building slowly. And I don't see them making any change from that. But I still firmly believe if the right player is available and there's a deal to be done, I think they'll do it, whether it's January or whether it's the summer.
Yeah, I agree.
That was it really for the questions, Peter. There's a few more comments that we might get to towards the end, but that's pretty much the questions.
Yeah. Well, look, we've done nearly an hour and 20 with lots of like review from Saudi, lots of comments and questions. It's been brilliant chat. And look, just want to say a massive thanks to Dom and Jordan for coming and taking the time and joining us for another Talk of the Toon. Absolute pleasure to always have you on to talk all things Newcastle. Newcastle's finest in terms of journalists and opinions, all things up north. So yeah, appreciate your time as well. But I think we just want to run through some sponsors before we wrap up the show. Am I correct?
That would be correct, Pete. Yeah, and we'll have our regular sponsors, and we might throw something else into the mix. I'll start the ball rolling, and I might cut over to you, Chris, then as we get halfway down the way. We will. All right. First of all, shout out to Simon at chaibarnes.com, and I'll just remove the banner. Yeah. So, and we all know at this stage, Simon, who's in the chat, supplies lovely T-shirts as our model Jordan is wearing there, and he also has the Shy Barnes range as well. So check out the website for the latest. It's changing as well. And there's more pictures of the loaded T-shirts and the Way Days one as well, and the hats. There's Mick with the hat on, and also the hoodies. We've talked about the hoodies as well. There's a few different colors now, different to the pictures that are there. So check out the website for the latest, really, on that front, on all things Shy Barnes and all things the loaded range. Also shout out to Pins and Prints, and the pins and the prints that are available from the lads there. So check that out. Also, shout out to Machine House and the T-shirts and hoodies that Marty in Machine House has available. So yeah, if get your orders in, I guess now if you're getting close to Christmas, make sure you get them in to get yours delivered on time. I know there's a bit of issues with the mail as well in the UK at the moment, so probably get it in as quick as possible. Also, shout out to the Geordie Rice and the range that Dean has available there on the Geordie Rice. And I'm going to come now to, there's a reason I'm slowing down a bit here, because, yeah, one of our new sponsors, the Radiator Shed. So Rust, who's in the chat, and he is going to join us on a live show at some point, as I put lights on the bottom in jail. So Russ, if you're looking for any kind of radiators or anything in that range, go check out the Radiator Shed. He also does the install works as well if you need to get things installed. So check that out and check out his latest range of radiators. But this is the addition.
They're not just a pipe dream.
Not just a pipe dream, right? And as Russ said, recommended to you earlier, if you need radiators installed in that shed, he'll sort you out. But Russ has donated prizes to load up. But before I show you the prizes, and Chris will tell us a bit more, because we're not going to run the draw tonight. We're just going to let you know what the prizes are. But yeah, Russ also has us on his vans. Check that out. We're on the back of a van. We're on the side of a van. On the back of a van again. So yeah, so you can't miss it.
Lads. We're growing.
We're going. Love that, Russ, and thanks for doing that. But yeah, we have some prizes from Russ, and I'm going to hand you over to Chris now, and I have the pictures ready, Chris, to talk.
I've seen them, mate. I've seen them, so thank you very much for that, Daz. Yeah, so we promised a couple of weeks ago that there was going to be a mega prize giveaway, and this is what we're talking about right now. So our sponsor, Bus, from the Radiator Shed, has kindly put up this television, 43-inch television with Google smart speakers. As you know, we're on our push to 5K with Christmas around the corner. Bus has very kindly donated this prize. I must add, because Russell shouts at me if I don't. Unfortunately, the monitor and the computer next to it do not come as part of the package. So please,
how about the pen, the mouse?
What a lovely mouse! No, we can't throw that in. But yeah, the television and the Google speakers are going to be given away very shortly in a prize draw. I've got a picture there of the speakers separately. So some very, very big prizes that we are giving away.
We might have already given it away, Chris.
What, sorry?
If you check it out, someone wants it for appearance fees.
Well, the Ruster said anybody, if the winner can have the pen.
The only caveat in terms of being involved in this draw is you must be a member of Loaded Mag. We bring this up all the time, and as you can see, it's $1.99 a month to be a member of Loaded Mag. So if you are interested, Daz, last time we checked, I think we had over 90 members. Am I right in saying that?
The last time I checked would have been about a month ago, and there was about 90 members then. It does fluctuate, people drop in and out, but around that. So that there is a good, and we are also in that 90.
We are.
So we can't obviously win it. So sorry to break that to you, lads. We can't win the prize.
Yeah,
but so your chances there, are up there.
Yeah, so if you want to be in with a chance of winning this great prize before Christmas, make sure that you become a member of Loaded Mag. And as I say, that is how to do it. You can't do it on your mobile phone. It's got to be done on a tablet or a PC. So if you'd like to consider becoming a member and being involved in the next prize draw, you know what to do.
Yeah, and make sure you are subscribed
as well.
Yes,
very important.
Great point, Mark.
And of course,
be subscribed.
All that is courtesy of the radiatorshed.com. So go check that out. And what Russ has available. And as I said before, we will get Russ on the show as well at some stage. He's just very busy as it's cold outside. He's busy. So that was it from the sponsors. Pete, I guess.
That's it. Absolutely superb show. Again, massive thanks to Jordan and Dom for joining us. Boys, it's always a pleasure to chat to you about all things Newcastle United, and we will be back, no doubt, with plenty more shows over the course of the next week or two leading up to Christmas. In fact, there's a few shows that we're already in the works with and one or two confirmed. So I'll speak to the boys afterwards and we'll get them up and available to you. But look, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for everyone in the chat. We always appreciate everybody that takes the time to come and join us. The brilliant questions, the brilliant chattering throughout the chat during the show. It means so much to us. So thank you for taking the time. The mods, as always, thank you for your fantastic contributions to all things Loaded Mag. And yeah, we'll be back with plenty more. So stay tuned.
How'd you like that?
How you like